Spoilers ahead.
Some people thought Unwelcome was a potent horror film with something significant to say about modern anxieties regarding masculinity, while some people felt it had a serious straight-to-video vibe about it. Now, unfortunately, this is one of those movies that doesn't have a lot of meat on its bones for me to pick away at. So, as I respect your valuable time as much as you do, I'm going to recap this plot in under 3 minutes to allow you to get back to doing whatever it was you were doing before you were so kind as to click on this video for me. Let's do it.
Unwelcome is a 2023 folk horror film directed by John Wright, whom you might know from Grabbers. It stars Hannah John Kamen, Douglas Booth, and Jamie Lee O'Donnell. The story opens in London with a young couple named Maya and Jamie finding out they're pregnant. And as they're celebrating, a group of local dicks break in and beat everyone senseless. Despite the lads rugby kicking Maya up and down the kitchen, the baby makes it through. But the event scares them both all the way to the Irish countryside to a house Jamie inherited from his great aunt. It turns out the house needs a little TLC, so they hire the Whelan family. The local bar owner Maeve, who knew Jamie's aunt, tells them to leave a bit of raw liver out back every night for the little people. But they don't. Maeve tells the couple Jamie's great aunt's daughter disappeared when she was 2, and she says the little people did it. But Maya thinks she probably killed the child in a fit of postpartum depression. Round at the local pub, everyone's friendly and stereotypical. There's a drunk named Seamus, and an even drunker local named Rory, who gets the boot for being rude. When Maeve finds out Maya didn't bother leaving anything out for the little people, she tears the arse out of her and warns her they'll be hungry, so Maya promises to do it when she gets home. And while they're finishing dinner, Rory, who got the boot, gets attacked by something creepy. The next morning, the Whelan family come into the house unannounced, and they're somewhat lacking in culture. The head of the family insists everyone call him Daddy Whelan, and you might recognize his oldest, biggest son from Game of Thrones. And he's got an accent from a totally different country somehow. And that was a geographical observation, not a political one. So lighten the fuck up. And they go into Jamie and Maya's personal belongings and steal things from the house over and over to make sure we know they're not good people. And the Whelan kids even take the stereotypes as far as starting an argument with Jamie over his Englishness. To keep the peace, Maya decides to leave the liver out, and the second she does, it's snatched up, and something giggles. Later that day, the Whelan's behavior gets out of hand, and Daddy Whelan beats up Owen, and Jamie loses his temper. But it's Maya that ends up settling everything, and she's fed up having to do it in her condition. So she heads into the forest and meets missing Rory's dog, Molly, who leads her to a strange stone shrine. So Maya splits, and on her way back, she meets Big Owen, who's crying. Maya tries comforting him, so he tries mounting her, as you do, but the little people save her, and when she brings Jamie back to explain what happened, he suggests she might be struggling with baby brain. Then he has a temper tantrum and shouts at his very pregnant wife before he heads off to the pub, which you could say is very Irish of the Englishman. Back at the pub, the Whelans show up to find out what happened to their big daft brother, but Maeve boots them out and pours Jamie another pint. Back at the house, Maya's visited by the little people, and they leave her Owen's head in a shopping bag as a moving-in gift. When Prince Jamie returns, he shites his trousers, and then the Whelans show up. So Jamie keeps Daddy at the front door, but the kids sneak around the back. So Maya's forced out the window, and when the Whelans realize what's happened, they're heartbroken for about a minute. Then they set the place on fire and beat Jamie up while Maya sprints off to find the little people for help. She tells them she'll give them whatever they want in return, and help they do. They kill the brother and then the sister, all while Jamie's hiding under the bed. Then right as Maya's going into labor, Daddy threatens to wreck everything. But Molly the dog comes to the rescue at the last minute, allowing Maya to blow Daddy away with his own gun. If you figured that was the end, you'd be wrong. After they've been to the hospital and back, the little people come take the baby as payment. So Maya beelines it back to the shrine, and she finds the lost daughter of Jamie's great aunt, who's become property of the little people too. But after everything she's been through, Maya's not having it. So she stabs one of the little people and crushes the lost daughter's skull with her bare hands. And then she's crowned mother of the little people, and she's baptized in the blood of the dead woman.
And there you have it, folks. Drink this in. It's not often you'll hear me say I am embarrassed to be Irish, and I'm not going to say it now either. This was just a shitty film. Here's the good bits.
The good bits.
The opening scene was unexpected and brutal, and it actually really riled me up. Generally speaking, movies tend to shy away from any sort of violent contact with pregnant women, but they really went for it, and that set a tone I wasn't anticipating. As a rule, and for obvious reasons, I never read other people's reviews before I do my own, but this movie's been coming out since last year, and I did end up hearing it had a strong Gremlins vibe to it. Like everyone else on the planet who's seen the movie, I loved Gremlins, so I went into this thinking it would be a lighthearted, tongue-in-cheek experience, and sometimes it was. The effects were practical for the most part, and the little people weren't your typical CGI cut and pastes. But don't get me wrong, they looked ridiculous, but it's obvious they put some effort into creating them versus banging them out on the computer. And to me, a kid of 80s horror, that's always a good thing. The third act was better than the first two, but only kind of, and only because nothing really happens in the first two. Your standard movie's meant to build and intensify as it progresses through the plot, and then it culminates in the third act at the climax, and that's the point when things are meant to be bonkers. In that regard, the third act definitely was bonkers. Having said that,
the shite bits.
Unwelcome hasn't a feckin' clue what it's trying to be. It goes from brutal violence to Jim Henson's Muppets to Days of Our Lives to bog standard Irish folklore and back again a dozen times. And it uses overblown cartoonish cliches to paint this unbalanced picture. Regarding the performances, you'd think with a cast like this you'd at least get some decent acting. And you do, except director John Wright's got them all acting like one-dimensional archetypes. The opening scene was shown Maya and Jamie experience a terrible trauma, which in filmmaking terms is great, but for reasons I don't understand, Wright spends the next hour having them tell us about how it's affected them. And he does the exact same thing with the Whelan family when he shows us how terrible they are the first time we meet them. Then he has them lie, cheat, steal, and argue with the client every time they're on screen for the rest of the movie. The best characters in film are never that simple because human beings are never that simple. As Paul McCartney said in 1982, there is good and bad in everyone. When you write characters who are only good or bad, you've let your movie down. Finally, it's hard to tell who the baddies are in Unwelcome. The little people die if you kick them hard enough, which makes them less than scary by my standard. They helped Maya through a very difficult situation, making them good, but they dragged Rory the drunk off for no apparent reason, making them bad again. And they saved Maya and Jamie in the end, making them good. Then they stole Maya's baby, which doesn't make them good or bad because Maya suggested it. The Whelan family stand out much more as the main threat to Jamie and Maya, but they're all wiped out by the little people with a wave of Maya's hand. Horror movies can be lots of things, like scary or suspenseful, dramatic, creepy, poignant, shocking, dreadful, and even funny at times, but they're not meant to be confusing.
The verdict.
So, should you watch Unwelcome? Or should you leave the DVD sitting out back near the forest so the little people can take it away?
Ireland is the home of a zillion frickin' artistic powerhouses like Yeats, Oscar Wilde, Anna Doran, James Joyce, Bram frickin' Stoker, to name a few. Culturally speaking, the island is teeming with fantasy elements and folklore, and it boasts a natural countryside that attracts movie and television production from everywhere. Without question, the place should be the #1 source of folk horror in the world, but these movies just keep bringing people over from England and trying to scare them with fairies in the backyard. And for me, if I am honest, it is all getting a bit long in the tooth, as it has been for a lot of these supposed horror movies I've been watching lately. And yes, I can feel some of you through this lens right now saying, Johnny, stop complaining about all these shitty little horror stories. If you think you can do better, go right ahead.
All by myself in the morning. All by myself in the night. All by myself I get lonely.
It's me, Johnny, from that thing you just watched. If you enjoyed it, go down there and smash me in the face to subscribe. And if you want to watch another thing, there's one right there. Do it!